Good afternoon. I'm Michelle Tefertiller. I am the Primary Education Director here at Memoria Press and trailblazer for our Facebook Live series that we're going to be doing. I'm going to talk a little bit here at first to give people a chance to kind of log in to the chat. I have two friends from Memoria Press with me in the background there. One is running the camera and the lights, and she did this beautiful display behind us. The other, Aloud, she is going to be reading the questions that you all type in during the chat. So if you did not send in a question before now, but something occurs to you as I'm talking, just send it in and Aloud will shout it out to me and we'll get that answer. We want your questions answered today. So I'm going to start with, I have about 8 questions that people sent in prior to now, and I'm going to just read those and kind of give you my answers. So the first question was, how does our work in kindergarten through 2nd grade directly prepare students for their work in grammar and upper school? And I'm going to combine with question number 2. What are the essential foundational skills they are learning? Because those two things I can answer together at the same time, and I've written out, so I'll be reading a little bit from my notes. The first thing that they're going to be learning in K-2, they're to read. So in kindergarten, we're going to teach them how to read, how to decode and read, and we're going to expand upon that in 1st and 2nd grade. By the end of 2nd grade, we have pretty fluent readers, and that's due to the purposeful pace of our introduction to phonics and our blending and reading and decoding and comprehension. Mm-hmm. The second thing we're going to do is teach them how to write legibly. That skill is going to go with those students for the rest of their lives. If people can't read what you write, then there's going to be then you're going to have a problem. If you can't read what you write yourself, there's going to be a problem. So we're teaching students to write and to write legibly, and with cursive we're teaching them how to write quickly. So when they get to high school or college, they can take those written notes, not typed notes, those written notes that are proven to help aid in memory of what is written down. So we're going to teach them to read, we're going to teach them to write, we're going to teach them phonetic skills that will help them to decode any words they encounter in the rest of their lives in their reading. So students will not always recognize all the words that they encounter in a book they're reading, especially if they get into a college text. They're gonna at some point have to be able to break down and sound some words out. And we teach those foundational skills in the primary grade levels. We're going to expand their vocabulary. This is the single most reliable correlate to reading ability. An advanced vocabulary is gained in K-2. We're going to start their study of Latin. By studying Latin, they're going to learn how to think, and we could do a whole Facebook Live session on why a student should study Latin. We're going to start that in 2nd grade and teach them the parts of speech in English. So that's going to carry them on through their formal study of English grammar in 3 through 6. In K-2, we're going to master addition and subtraction facts, which they'll expand upon that in 3rd grade with multiplication and division. But we're going to teach them mastery of those operations so that when they get to 7th, 8th grade and begin studying pre-algebra and algebra, geometry, those more abstract math areas, they're ready. They don't have to spend any of that brain power on thinking what are 5 plus 7 or what is 6 times 6. They have those mastered and they're fast with them. So we start working on speed as well in those primary grade levels.
Hey Michelle.
Yeah?
Why don't you reintroduce yourself for the new people who have just joined?
Okay, so my assistants have told me that some new people have joined. So just to let you know who I am, I'm Michelle Tefertiller. I'm the Primary Education Director for Memoria Press, former teacher and former parent. I've used the materials and love them. So we were talking about the ways that K-2, what we do in K-2 prepares students for the future and what their foundational skills on. I've got through learning to read, learning to write legibly, phonics skills, expanding vocabulary, studying Latin, and mastery of the 4 operations, or not the 4 operations in K2, the two of the 4 operations, but mastering those addition and subtraction facts. We're also going to help begin working with students on memorizing. So beginning in kindergarten, we start memorizing scripture and poems and all kinds of our recitation series, our little fun facts that students need to know. And they memorize the answers to these, and they learn how to stand and how to speak in front of a group, how to present themselves, and how to be comfortable in front of other people. So they are learning how to memorize and then how to recite. And by memorizing, those students' self-esteem is built as well. Those students see what their brain is capable of. When you can memorize 33 scriptures and some poems and can, with one word, be reminded of all of that, that's a good skill to have when you're moving on into 3rd through 6th grade. We are also exposing them to fine art, classical music, poetry, and classic literature. And by doing this, the students begin to see the beauty that is all around us. Of course, we study the beauty in creation through the sciences and through our study of the Bible and of Scripture, but the beauty in the written word, the beauty in the classical art from all of history, the beauty in a piece of classical music, those things are things that I think are lacking in our world today, and we deliberately expose students to that so they can see the beauty of our past. And most importantly, we are molding their character. So through everything we do, whether it is reciting, memorizing, even learning their phonics and their blending and reading, we use every opportunity we can to build a student's character and remind them of how special they are and their place, their important place in our lives, in our world. So my third question is, what is your favorite thing about the MP primary program? So I thought long and hard about this because I love the enrichment and I love Storytime Treasures. I love the way we do literature, but probably my favorite thing, and it's probably my favorite because I taught it for so long and have seen the success in countless students. In fact, I've never seen it where it was not a success when it was done as written, is the First Start Reading program. It is the best and my favorite learning to read program that is out there. It just works, and it works with all kinds of students, whether they have special needs or are gifted. Everyone can learn and benefit of moving through the First Start Reading program. Question number 4. Tips on managing it all, please. With a pre-K, a 3rd grader, and a 6th grader, my days are spent running around like a chicken without my head, and oftentimes things get dropped. I understand that too. I homeschooled for several years with two students that were in a couple of grades apart, so 2 different grade levels, and a toddler who I had to keep occupied in a little, it was like a jail, I'm sorry to tell you that. It was like a little octagon thing, and I would put something in there for them to play with while I'd work with one student, and then I would have to change that activity out and work with another student. So you're right, it is a lot like juggling, and I remember those days well, and I wish I had some specific things to tell you that would help you through that season. And the best thing that I can say to you and encourage you with is to have your quiet time every day. That helped me a lot. And to utilize that nap time. So there's a lot that you can get done working one-on-one with those older students while your little one is napping. And look for things that you can do together. There are several areas of our curriculum that you can do combining those different grade levels, like the Read Aloud program. And I would also encourage you to always have your students in the same room so that the older ones can hear what the younger ones are doing and vice versa, because there's a benefit from hearing one another. And if you want more information about that, I know there are a lot of forum posts on that exact topic, because we have people that use Memoria Press that teach for, I don't know, 9, 10 different grade, I mean seriously, 9 or 10 different children all on different grade levels, and they manage to juggle that, and they are much better at answering that question than I am. But that would be my main point, would be to tell you to see what you can combine and work with your students together, and don't be worried about which grade level it is, but read alouds are a good one for that. This next question, I could talk the whole time about, and some of you would really be interested and some of you would be really bored, but the question is this: I'm curious why we don't memorize together first all the sounds a phonogram makes. So what that question is asking is, when we learn the letter A, why don't we learn A, and all the different spellings for that letter sound? And the answer would be this: there are several programs out there who teach that way, in that method. I have taught one of those methods before myself, so I have some familiarity with that, and there is something very impressive about listening to a class of students recite each letter of the alphabet and all the different sounds and spellings that those letters make. The problem comes when you sit down and try to decode a word. When you sit down and try to decode a word, and a child has a memory, and they have good memories, they can memorize all those sounds typically. They have that memory. They have to look at that letter A in a simple 3-letter word like cat, let's say, and they stop at the A and they have to run through all of those sounds. Or they stop at the letters CH and have to run through all of the sounds and then decide which CH sound does this go in. And that process takes so much time that it almost immobilizes that child, and they cannot decode simple words because they are running through all of the sounds that those letter combinations can make. And I have actually even tutored students who have come from a program like that, where they memorize all the spellings of a word, and they would be immobilized by going down a list of 3-letter words for that very reason, and would just become paralyzed almost, and then they would lose confidence in themselves. And it took me a long time to retrain them to just learn the short vowels. That's why First Start Reading is so key, because it teaches one sound for each letter, and we focus on the short vowels for weeks and weeks and weeks until they're mastered, because that's the hardest sound of those vowels. So also I would say that that method of learning all the sounds, Cheryl Lowe often talked about, and she wrote 3 or 4 articles that we have. You can find them on our website, memoriapress.com, on the Spalding method and the difference between that method and the Orton-Gillingham method, which is a different progression of introduction of sounds one at a time. So that's kind of technical, but the difference between the Orton-Gillingham and the Spalding method, she wrote several articles on, and that would be a good place to go to find more answers if you're really interested in why we don't teach all the sounds for the phonograms when we first learn them. So that's my short answer, my short long answer. Number 6, what is your favorite read aloud? Okay, so it's like you're asking me to decide which one of my children is my favorite, because so here's my list of my favorites. Ferdinand the Bull is probably my favorite week in kindergarten, because I love how the art, sorry. I love how the art and the music and the poetry all kind of combine perfectly. The music actually fits perfectly. And I love that week, and I love that story, and I love that Disney did a little cartoon about it that is almost the book exactly like it was written, that you can find on YouTube. I just love everything about Ferdinand the Bull, and I love the bandoleros and the picadoras and the cork tree that has corks hanging off of it. That's one of my favorites. So Ferdinand the Bull, Rocks, but I love Roxaboxen, because I love that was a real story, and that you can actually go to Arizona or New Mexico, wherever it was, and actually see this place. I love Bread and Jam for Francis, because you get to read a little bit and then you sing a little jump rope song in the perfect meter. So I love the Francis books too. But Bill Pete, how can you not love Bill Pete? Herbert's Hair Raising Adventure is delightful, and we have several Bill Pete books: Cyrus the Unsinkable Sea Serpent, Farewell to Shady Glade. There are some in every grade level of the primary grades, and I love the Bill Pete books. I love Pickle Chiffon Pie, just because that's such a fun book, and those his name's Roger something. He's a great author. His other books are great too. Katie No Pocket. How can you not love a book about a kangaroo that doesn't have a pocket for her Joey? That's a great book. The Five Chinese Brothers, wonderful. The Christmas Miracle of Jonathan Toomey. I love this book, but it makes me cry every year. I cannot read it without crying. I guess that's why I love it. So those are my favorite. Those are my favorites. And they're all children's books. So you didn't specify. I guess you said your favorite read aloud. So there you go. That is correct. What parts of the primary program are essential and what could be dropped if needed? That's a tricky question because Memoria Press really endeavors to not add a lot of fluff to our curriculum packages. So it's very different when you're coming from another program, and I'm not going to mention any by name, but there are a lot of programs that have cards and posters and gadgets and things that they've added to their program that are expensive, and you use them a little bit but not really often enough to warrant the expense. And I get that you don't want to buy extra things, and when I tell you that there is not a lot of fluff within our products and our materials, I'm telling you there's not a lot of fluff. When we have flashcards, it's because terms are challenging, and if you just show a student a workbook and have them memorize the facts to know from the workbook, they may or may not study them well enough. But if you have a flashcard and they're looking at one side and they have to know what's on the other side of that card before they can move it to their mastered pile, that makes a difference. And so several of our products have flashcards. They're important. The phonics flashcards, they're expensive, but you're going to use them for 3 years. And we use them for spelling and literature. They're not fluff. I mean, you really need those cards. You could make them yourself. I did that for a while. Good for you. If you have time to make all of those, that's fine. But you need those cards, those flashcards with those sounds on them. So there's not a lot of fluff. The things that you can do without, we have already indicated for you as optional. If it says optional, that means that some students will need those for extra work and some may not. So if you wanted to wait on anything that is designated as optional, wait. You could wait on those. You may find that you need them. You may find you could do without them. Number 8, last question. What to do if a student struggles with writing? What are some ways to bring a bit more fun into their days? For example, that's 2 different questions. To bring more fun into their writing. I'm guessing because we're talking about primary, you're talking about how do you make copying, because we do a lot of copying in the primary grades. Almost all the writing we're doing is copying because all of the answers to the comprehension questions are modeled first and worked together with you and your child, and then they're copied into their book so that there's correct spelling, capitalization, and punctuation. So all of the copying that they're going to do, I don't know that you can make it fun. I'm not sure that that's really important to be fun, but you can make it not as much work time by breaking it up. By working on one answer together, letting him write that answer. Then you do some more talking, talk about the next answer, write it on the board and have him copy. So you break up the copying time. If it's a copybook exercise, have him do the writing on one day, just one day. The next day, just go back and make corrections. Look for letters that you could write a little bit better, that kind of thing. Play some classical music. But your student, it is okay for a kindergarten, a first or a second grader to have 10 minutes, 15 minutes of time where they're writing, where they're just copying something and they're working hard and focused on writing. And that's okay. They should be able to do that. For example, okay, in the same question they mentioned the disappearing memory verse, and they would love something similar for their young child because they've evidently used this in their older child. We use disappearing memory verse in kindergarten. That's how I taught my children to memorize their verse. We wrote it on the board. We did all the language lesson where we explained the vocabulary, the capitalization, the punctuation, and then we did the disappearing words, and that's how we memorized it, and kindergartners can do it. So I would say use that with your child. And that's all my questions. Do we have any more questions, Allie?
Not yet.
No more questions? If you have any questions, type them up now. I don't know. I could do a little song and dance. I could talk about my favorite books that aren't read aloud books. So probably my favorite book is Pride and Prejudice, Jane Austen. I love Jane Austen, but it's hard for me to separate that favorite book of all time with what I'm reading right now. I'm currently reading Dracula by Bram Stoker, and it's scary, but I'm loving it, and it's a very well written book. Different from all the movies I've ever seen. What else could I talk about? People are typing. Nope. People are typing, so they're telling me I can wrap it up, and we look for you. Oh, they wanted me to mention that this will be posted on YouTube, and so you can watch it at a later time. And we will be doing more of these on a variety of subjects. So we look forward to seeing you in the future. Bye.